I have like a restlessness problem with this chair.
This?
It's like I'm just never quite
comfortable.
I'm never this way in a way that's enough to be comfortable to be for a long time.
Those are better for that.
Man, for me, those are too, like, I'm very boxed in. It's like an airplane seat to me.
Yeah.
So, but this will work for now.
This is better. Like, at least, we have space.
Yeah. The problem is it's like that, was it on Talladega Nights, where it's like, what do I do with my hands? It's like that, except it's with my whole body. It's like, well, what do I do with my legs? And where do I... This is a whole new thing, and there's not a lot of room, you know? I was noticing
It's not those recliners.
I was noticing walking through, since everybody's quarantined, just kind of going around the city, there's a lot of people just sitting out in front of their places hanging out.
Yep.
And it's a very American thing to have, I think, the most big and robust, comfortable outdoor furniture you could have.
Right.
Which is not the thing here.
Well, no, they just sit. Yeah. Well, you go to because most people go to the park and it's sunny. Go to the park.
Yeah. And so you'll see all these. My wife loves it because you'll see all these people sitting outside on this furniture that I would describe as adorable, but like child size.
Small.
So there's always somebody sitting out on a stool.
Yeah,
that's
the tiny
a
ones.
little stool or a teeny little chair that's like about the size of the palm of my hand and not as thick.
And they're comfortable.
And they're just, well, no, this is the thing. I don't think they are, but it's quaint and it fits in a closet, so it works. But
they're comfortable enough. How about
they're more comfortable than I would be in that chair. I will say that for sure.
Well, yeah, but they're more comfortable on this than you are, so yeah.
On the subject, I used to have used to buy the recliners, the Lazy Boy. And I'd get the one that was the extra jumbo thing too. So that's
the jumbo Lazy Boy.
There's a jumbo Lazy Boy that is, this is America, that is made specifically for heavy men, for big, heavy men. So it's wider and the cushioning is more robust, because I would buy a $800 recliner and fucking have the thing just be shit in a year. It would just be like the spray, everything, all the pads.
I guess at 350,
yeah. So you spend the money, and then you get the big dog. I think it literally was like the model was Big Dog.
Wait.
Spelled dog, DAWG.
Yeah, of course. Wait. Where did I read that? That there was the money was costing hospitals to upgrade the beds to be able to take 500-pound people or stuff like it. Was crazy because there was it was literally an ice widening technological advance for beds, chairs, but they were talking about buses too, and they had to literally spend money to widen
doorways and
space basically, because people were getting so fat.
Yeah. It's the wrong kind of thick,
of course,
guys.
It's in the US. Yeah, but there was something like how much money was costing on beds.
Yeah.
And that was an outrageous amount of money. It was crazy because they just, the old beds could not take that many 500, 600 people plus. Wait, the fact that we can talk about 600-pound plus people
is crazy.
And we don't say one, because I used to be the dude at the circus. Yeah. Now it's like, so there's my, my brother-in-law, then there's that guy that I know, and then you actually know people that are over 600 pounds. Yeah. That's insane.
Oh, that's not even, this is our people doing this. Damn it, hang on a second. It's Megan and Yaya. Can't win them all.
Anyway, after the break, we are back.
After the break, we're back.
Yep.
All right, so this week's episode, we're going to talk about...
Speaking of fat people.
Fat people. Can't even say fat people anymore. I'm saying it.
If you're 600 pounds, yes, you can.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a descriptive word. Yeah. It's not...
What's,
I can't say like a red dwarf anymore. For, as stars.
Yeah.
I have to say...
It's a red little star now.
It's a red little star, yeah.
So, but this week we're going to talk about nutrition and diets, other diets.
The why they work, what's the the downside and everything, because there's no one size fits all.
Yeah.
But before we go into it, the reason I wanted to do that episode, actually, it's Richard who was talking about it, is because it seems like there's almost like there's a tribal aspect to diets now.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And so I want to talk about that, and then what is a diet for? So you want to start with that one?
That's a really good intro.
What is a diet for? Most people we talk to, I had again a message saying I'm on the protocol, I'm feeling awesome, but it's either like I'm not as lean as I want to be. So you remember like there was a time where lean was seen as a result of exercise, not diet.
Yeah.
That changed with the bodybuilding world in the 80s probably, when the guy was like, well, it's all about playing with nutrition and stuff like, because it became like a passive search in a way.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to go out there and make yourself leaner. All you got to do is change your intake.
Yeah.
Right. And so in a way that's an infantile pursuit. And I'm going to explain exactly what I mean from a pure physiological perspective. But so what should you expect out of a diet? What is the goal of a diet? If it's getting lean or losing weight, that's not a diet. That's just starving yourself for 6 weeks. That's not what we mean by diet. So anything that you do should have its own constraints. So what is a constraint for what I think a diet should do? For example, we have getting the sleep better. That's a protocol for StrongFit. Sleep better and better signals. Right? What I want out of a diet, honestly, is to be able to fight a great evil of today's world, which is that low-grade sympathetic response.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll see that that's what the carnivore diet does, for example. It allows you to fight that low-grade sympathetic response, that low-grade inflammation that we see through autoimmune diseases, that we see through skin problems, eczema, stuff like that. That was why the carnivore diet, so why does it work? I'm going to explain. Why the carnivore diet works really well for that. Yeah. For people that have arthritis, autoimmune diseases, again, skin condition like eczema, stuff like that, psoriasis, the carnivore diet can work really well. So so I'm going to explain why, but also the downside of the carnivore diet. And so we can go through diets like that.
Okay.
But I think for people to get healthy out of eating correctly, they need to understand that, first of all, this is not a tribal conversation. It's not the protocol versus carnivore diet versus keto or stuff like that. That's not the point. The point is to understand the human body in order to create your own diet, because honestly, you should do that. You should do your own stuff. So how come people don't do it? How come people always go back to the what to do? Tell me what to do. And how come they make that conversation into a tribal conversation when there's absolutely no need?
It is very interesting. And it's very common though. How often do we get
everything?
Asked?
We do that.
Every meal, I work at this time, I train this way. What exactly do I need to eat now? What do I eat now? Right. They really want this whole big structure.
Right. Like we could give. We can't.
Yeah.
By the way, that you need to understand that no one can.
Yeah.
Because we don't know where you are exactly at that second, how it's going to feel. Yeah. Again, that's the freestyle stuff. Right? That's not how the system works. That's not how the body works.
So why do you think why has this become such a, tribal is the word you use, but it's very much almost, it's tribalism backed up by some sort of nutritional dogma.
Yeah. Well, it's tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So there's actually a fundamental reason to that. I'm reading a lot lately about pain, right? And so pleasant touch and pain. So I sent you a few stuff about that to put on the library. And the papers I was reading were, it was fascinating. So it's all about interoception again, monitoring of the body signals, but it was showing that the skin actually, like pleasant to painful, has nothing to do with the skin receptors. That's not what this is. Pleasant touch or pain actually goes through cognition, and it's a social construct.
Okay.
Right. So they were showing directly that if you had the wrong socialization, especially early on and everything, you would be most likely to take the same touch as pain versus pleasant and everything. What was fascinating is, once we'll do a podcast on that, I think, is that the entire structure, especially social structure of pleasant touch versus pain, was mimicking exactly what we see with addiction.
Yeah.
For the longest time we thought addiction is it's the, you get the drug, it does that to your brain, done. Yeah. Where we saw now that actually socialization has a huge aspect. We saw that on the mice, right? Yep. On the rats, where under socialization they were not using the heroin anymore and stuff like that. So there's an entire parallel between addiction and that pleasant touch pain system, that it's a socialization thing first.
Well, and I think that's an interesting measure though of the difference, like to point out with addiction too, is that that's a way to get at the root of what often the problem. Addiction is kind of a twofold thing, right? Yep. There's the problems of the active drug use, yep. which are many deep. That's the whole thing. But I do think that that's often, even when they introduce socialization to these mice aren't responding. Like they're getting drugs, getting physically addicted to drugs, socialization comes up. But the issue I find with mice in those studies is that most drug addicts or addiction in general comes from a place of trauma somewhere in the back. Yep, it's a solution to a problem. These mice aren't given, like, their addiction framework, the whole root structure from the bottom up is like, there is no, like, that whole aspect. 50% of what addiction is removed from that. But this discussion is very
is about that. So what is that trauma that we experience in the early years coming from? Interestingly speaking, you're going to see that that trauma that targets addiction, right, to make you more susceptible, will actually be the exact same system that gets you toward feeling more pain and pleasant touch, or even when it comes to nutrition. So it's a very interesting idea. So, and actually it's a very simple one in a way. Like if you understand interoception and Carl Friston, it makes the most sense possible. So the idea was like when you're born, you have no motor control. You can't turn around, you can't do shit, right? So that means that, so let's go back for a second to Carl Friston, right? So the idea active inference is your body is a system that continuously makes a prediction, top down, this is how I'm going to feel, versus the observation of the body telling you that's how I actually felt. And then the difference between the two being the somatic error, the greater the somatic error, the bigger the problem. Yeah. We made many podcasts about this, right? So what? So when there's a somatic error or a prediction error, how do I fix it? I can change the prediction, change how I feel about it. So that's, or I can take an action, change the world to fit the prediction, right? So, blood sugar is low, like, blood sugar levels are low and everything. I'm going to get my ass up and go eat. Yeah. Right. That's how so prediction error is like prediction error versus homeostasis. Right? Homeostasis means everything is level, everything is cool. I feel the way I should be feeling, everything is fine. And suddenly I start to feel hungry. Like, whoop, that's not, how come I feel like this? I should not be feeling like this. I feel like this. Why? Because this is, okay. And so I get my ass up and then I go eat, I come back and I'm back into homeostasis. Mm-hmm. That's basically how the system tries to get you moving. When you're born, so in the first few months of your life, you have absolutely no way of changing the world to feed the prediction, since you have absolutely no motor control. Yeah. You cannot feed yourself. You can't even turn. So there's nothing that you can do in order to change the prediction. So the only way to physically change the world to feed the prediction is through your caretaker. So that means that from the first thing that you learn is that to change the world, you need the caretaker. And you communicate with the caretaker through crying, through movements, through, all that, through, making certain noise. Just like a cat learns to meow for its person, because he knows how to get that person's attention. It was tested actually that cats meow only for humans, but that all cats meow differently based on their person. Yeah. Because they know what works and what doesn't. Right. So it's the same thing for a baby. He learns that certain movements, certain cries, certain sounds that's the physical way he has to change the world to fit the prediction.
So it has to bond socially with somebody that can
a caretaker.
And that is interesting, because as a baby at that age, you really don't have any resources to do any of it on your own. If you need to eat,
zero.
There is you cannot get bigger, stronger, and go eat. Yep. So the only thing that you can use is, we'll call it social bonding or however.
That's what it's called. That's what is it. Yeah. So that means the first thing you learn to deal with the outside world is a social bond. Yeah. That's the first thing you have to learn, to create a social bond in order for you to be able to change the world. Right. So you could see, you know what I mean? That's the first thing you do. So that means that will be like, remember, like we used the wheel and we talked about cancer for with Paul Davis and everything. Like it seems like we always use, so you have defense mechanism when there's a problem. Like we talked about the wheel, right? And then you always, as they fail, you go back to an older. That means that the ultimate defense that we have is through social bonding. Like whenever you don't understand something, eventually you're going to get to that stage, almost like a baby form, where you cry out for your caretaker to change the world for you. That's the ultimate line of defense. I mean,
yeah. So is it a matter of will you translate that to me in the way that you're saying it to the tribalism on nutrition? Will you make that
right?
leap?
Yeah. So that means that, for example, like I am in a system that has figured that out by itself and has been educating people in order to sell them something. Right. So that means that I'm constantly in a confusion. For example, if you look, let's make it very, very concrete. When it comes to nutrition and the fitness industry, you never know what works. Welcome to the internet too, right? So, but to remember, like the pyramid that we had in the US, and then Atkins had to defend himself in front of Congress because he was saying, don't have carbs.
Yeah.
Remember that crazy
bread
shit?
And carbs. Yeah. Bread and pasta are the foundations of the nutritional education that I was given. Yeah.
By the way, that was given to us by doctors. I'm just saying, like, before we all start sucking dicks on, let's remember that the medical world gave us that one too. But how could you not be confused when it comes to nutrition?
Yeah. Right. I think in almost anything that there's so much information on nutrition out there. So many people trying to convince you of something that there's a sales pitch.
It's not just information.
It's not just information.
It's a sales pitch.
Yep. It's that everything it's kind of handpicked and packaged. I mean, it's like everything you're going to look at with the news. You can look at something and take all of the facts, and based on these specific words that are chosen and the way things are going, can really, really, really change what somebody believes about something. And I think with nutrition, it is maddening for somebody who doesn't know, who really doesn't know, who wasn't educated growing up, who does not know, to find out what they should be doing.
Right. So it's
like specifically beyond like.
And by the way, even when you know, it's a fucking headache, right? Yeah. And so going back for a second to the interoception of a baby, you have to understand that means that any position of authority, right, has that effect on us of making us passive. Yeah. Right, because we were passive.
You're willing. You at the very root of your being. You know that you have to give that over to somebody at some point.
That's the first thing you had to learn, is that I am passive, entirely passive. I'm learning about my body now, like things like, that's what they suck on their thumb and say, oh, this is how it tastes. Oh, that's me. How do I know that's me? Because I bite it and it hurts. Yeah. So, okay, so don't do it. Right. So the first few months is just that. It's interoception getting set. Yeah. And it's getting set through a position of authority that has complete control over you. And that is your savior. Yeah. Right. So that means that whenever you don't know, whenever things are bad, you're going to go right back to being that passive being that will cry out for the caretaker to change the world in a way that, so you could see that at the last line of defense, like when the world is not what I want, I need the caretaker to change it for me. Yeah. Because you always revert to that. And this is why we're so social animals, right? Like we can see right now through the let's not say coronavirus because we're going to get demonetized.
All the quarantine things.
Yeah, the quarantine thing. Through the quarantine that everybody thinks, oh, I would love to live, like on an island somewhere or in a cabin in the woods. That's not true. Yeah. Like now I think we can all recognize that we need socialization. Yeah. Like look how hard it is. By the way, we still socialize. Yeah. We still see people outside. And Holland is one of the best places when it comes to the quarantine.
Doing really, really, really well as far as making it not be super weird.
Right. Yeah. And it's still hard, right? Because we still socialize less than usual. Our socialization has changed. Look how hard it is. Like you do get negative, it's harder. It is harder. Yeah. So like the whole cabin in the woods, that's why I told people, bullshit. Bullshit, it's not true. We are social people.
What you want a weekend of that. I'm sure you want a weekend of that.
No, but even a week, everybody would be, by choice, right? Yeah. But trust me, there's that moment where you're going to go, because at the base of our being is a social animal.
Yeah. I know that bored Tyler would be, it would not work. It just wouldn't work. I don't know what I do. I'd be fucking right. I'd be like, well, are we just drinking this weekend? That's what it would be? I would just party, which would probably not be the nice recovery. Yeah, exactly. What else am I gonna do? Yeah, right.
But there's been tests where
putting at the trees,
putting a dude in an apartment with no contact with the outside, no TV, no internet, no phone, no nothing. The dude lost his shit within like 4 days or something like that. Yeah, you can't. Yeah. You can't. This is fundamentally, we're social animals. And so you have to understand that the social structure means passive and power structure. The second we are in a power hierarchy, and everything is a power hierarchy, sorry, woke people, right? That means that you will always be naturally an inclination toward passivity when it comes to that, because that is, again, how we start.
Yeah. Be honest, you have to trust. But it is the same way. It's not even that it's foolish. Because you do have
No. Thank God. Otherwise, we wouldn't have society.
Well, also, because it's like, I don't fucking know anything.
Yeah,
I gotta trust that this guy knows.
Totally.
This guy said it.
Right.
And now, like we've said, there's an oversaturation and there's bad motives behind a lot of these things. Yes.
So again, like we talked about the fitness industry having a share of responsibility. The responsibility we bear with this is that we have betrayed people time and time and time again, just because we saw that the power of the uniform allows us to sell stuff even when it's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
We had that with cigarettes. We had that, like, God knows the government did a share of that one. But us as not necessarily you, because I didn't do it, but doesn't matter, as a collective, we have betrayed people by continuously feeding them stuff because I wanted to sell my thing. Yeah. And it's not always evil from a lone person perspective, because they probably believe what they said. Yeah. But that position of authority that they use put the people that were trusting them into a passive state where they were willing to just absorb whatever was coming their way. Because again, this is what we do. And it is not a bad thing. It is a good thing. This is why we have a society that works mostly.
Yeah. This is, so what does a guy do? So a guy gets to a subject, in this case, nutrition, right? Where it's like, I don't know, fuck all about nutrition. I need to make some changes. Right. How do I need to eat? What do I do?
Right. So it's always, so they're going to have to go with someone they trust first. Right. So my advice on this would be, I would take 3 to 5 people that you respect, that you feel like, I think I can trust that person. I would decompose what that person says, get the principles out of it, and compare those 5 people. And wherever they match, you get something.
Universal principles, universal truths are...
Universal?
It's a concept that I haven't... it goes back to that Charles Munger thing that you've mentioned as well, which is this talk... Was that Berkeley? Was that
no, it was USC.
USC was
1994.
The one. And so that's on the library as well. You can search for Charles Munger. But...
Wells of Worldly Wisdom.
Yeah, but what's interesting is there's a lot of these kind of universal truths. And there are things like everything that I think is universal works on the big and the small. Yep. And I think with nutrition, for the average person coming in, and all of us people raise our hands to say, trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. You cannot expect someone to trust you because you told them to. Kind of what all of us are doing in the fitness industry is waiting for them to learn they can't trust that person and can't trust that person. And hopefully they all fall to you eventually, and we think we can do that.
Right, so it's attacking others. Yeah. Right, in order to say, like, that guy is not trustworthy, I am. So it's literally playing the role of the caretaker, of the parent, in order for people to come to you. That's the tribal foundation that we're doing right now. And we're doing it to make money. Yeah.
So that person, though, takes those universal principles. And from there, they can either choose an expert's stuff that aligns most with what they found.
So that's the base they start, right? Yeah. But first of all, out of those universal truths that they need to get, they also need to understand what a diet is for. A diet is not to give you the 6-pack. This is objective based. Now we're going back to a conversation, objective versus constraint. You need to put those universal truths as constraints. But how do they sell you diets? With a 6-pack. With like, you're going to look lean and everything. So let's talk about that a little bit first, because it's very important. For me to get under 10% body fat, right now I'm probably around, 10, 11%. For me to go lower than this, the amount of work that is required for me to go under 10 is ridiculous. I am bred to be strong, to be like more like a horse. I can carry a shit ton of weight, so I'm a bull always. Yeah. So that means that I can gain weight easily. Right, so that goes with the strength. That means I am not naturally lean. Even when I was as a swimmer and everything, I always had, well, in bodybuilding, they say 16. It's always like, that little water weight that you carry. I don't have thick skin, but it's like, for me, getting lean is a lot more work than from someone else. Like, you have people that are naturally lean. Yeah. They do a little bit, and 6-pack, you can see the ribs and everything. But they usually don't gain weight as easily as the big dudes. That's just the way it is. So the problem when they say like, I want to get lean is that you're turning this into an objective. What you mean lean is you mean I want to look like that person.
Yeah.
And that's, you already failed because you're not that person. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know if they're taking drugs or not. They might not have your baseline.
Yeah.
Your body fat baseline, because some people have some people do have a different baseline.
There's too many opportunities to cut bait then too, because it's been, all right, well, it's been 2 months. You don't like him? Look like him?
Right.
Oh, it's been 3? It's been a year?
Yeah.
It's too easy to cut bait when you set anything close to that. I also think getting into it with short-term goal is already an issue because I used to be a real big proponent for goal setting, kind of, and I remember seeing something. I switched it around to where basically what you need to do is do kind of like action-based targets. Like I'm going to do these types of things.
I'm going to do.
Yeah, and that was a real game changer for me. But even now, I just think that with nutrition, that goals are maybe a bit just totally the fucking it's just the wrong way to go about it, and that you have to come into something going like, how can I need a starting point that I can grow and evolve for the rest of my life.
Exactly, because that's the second. So once you understand that, first of all, like getting the six pack like that dude is not the right idea. You also have to understand that there is no diet that will, whatever you want to call diet, like, way of eating, whatever, that will work for the next 3 years the same way.
Correct.
It's Epictetus. You will never cross the same river twice. It's not the same river, and you're not the same person.
Well, and we're talking adaptation when it comes to making any change, right? You want to be optimal. If you want to get leaner, that's going to require adaptation and change. When you get stronger, adaptation and change. So putting the same exact food in and this is gradual thing, what kind of fucking adaptation is that?
Because it's going to work. And then because how many people say it worked, but 6 weeks later, it doesn't work anymore. Yeah. That's because you can't do the same diet anymore because you're not the same person anymore. That means that where you started 6 weeks ago, it worked. Yeah, because it worked for the person who you were 6 weeks ago. Yeah. But now you're a different person. It has to change.
Yeah, just eat less, train more, eat less of the same thing, train harder. And then when that stops working, just eat less of the same thing and train harder or more, depending on which direction you're trying to go. Yeah. And that is not infinitely scalable. That's the issue.
Exactly.
It's barely scalable for, like you said, 3 months.
Yeah, maybe. Right? And like, so like the calorie deficit and all that stuff. So, and so this is the place we are right now where we have been betraying people by giving them 2 months objectives, 2 months goal. Do what I say for 2 months, be passive, remove how you feel. Because if you look, when we put people, it's like, do this, do this, do that. So remove how you feel, do not learn, just get information, not knowledge. Remove how you feel, literally cut yourself from yourself for the next 2 months in order to get that objective over there, which is looking like that person. So literally we are trying to tell you not to be yourself. Yeah. Right. And we have done that to sell a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So first step is you're going to get those universal truths. Then you're going to understand that diet is about you getting healthier. And then if you get healthier, you will lose weight. Everything will move in the right direction. Yeah. And then after that, you need to start learning because every 4 weeks, 6 weeks, things will change. So this is why you need to learn. But so in order to learn, you have to understand that you cannot learn in a passive way. You have to stop being that infant that is like, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Because the whole like, tell me what to do, that's exactly what you're saying is, you are my, and I understand where it's coming from because they're saying you are my caretaker. So there's a social bond that we create with those people because they like us, they like the podcast, they think we make sense. So there's a social bond being created. By creating that social bond, we become the caretaker, the one providing the help. But the problem is in that process, a lot of people are going to get drowned into becoming passive, becoming infants. And so I talk about the infantilization of people all the time. That's what we are doing. We are telling people become an infant, become passive.
We're creating dependency.
Exactly.
What it is. Yeah.
Right.
And dependency is kind of a requirement for any economic model. It's the truth. If I sold you 1 month of learning nutrition from Julien, and you took that and you did that course for 1 month, and then in that month you never needed any information from Julien ever again on that subject, and your nutrition shit was fixed, There is zero money to be had at the end of that road. None.
It's a terrible business model.
It's a terrible business model.
And yet that's what we try to do.
Yeah. So for the sake of, let's get into the specifics of some of these diets, though.
Right. Oh, yeah. So it is a terrible business model, but this is what we want for people. So,
by the way, none of these things that we're going to get into are really monetized on their own. You know what I'm saying? Like,
some people just
there's
put
just
it out
adjacent
there,
things that people are using to monetize the coaching of it. But these diets themselves just exist.
Yeah, but so that's why we want to talk about the diet that exists. Is actually in a way to see that you can get the principles out of those diets, so you can apply it to yourself. Yeah. What I don't want to see people is saying like carnivore diet can work for specific things, right? What I don't want people to do is see carnivore diet to work for me for 6 weeks. Therefore, I'm on the tribe carnivore diet forever. Yeah. Even if after 6 weeks it doesn't work anymore, because now you need to adapt things, but you might need to change things in a way where you don't belong to the carnivore tribe anymore, because you added something that technically you're not supposed to add. Yeah. And at first, the first 6 weeks, you didn't need to add that. Yeah, but that's because now you're better. And so that's what I want to basically teach people is do not be an infant, never be passive. You have to learn as you go. And so that requires you to get your ass off the couch and do. Yeah. Be active, not passive. Do not be an infant.
Learn and reason for yourself amidst the process.
Because you are not an infant anymore. Now you can take action. So all the stuff requires you to take action. Yes, it's a much harder sell than stay on the couch and just absorb what I give you, but that's the fact.
But that's the difference between when you say something like, oh, you should have fats during the day, carbs during training, and protein during the evening. If a person's first inclination goes, well, what does that specifically mean I eat for dinner? They're kind of missing the step when the step should be understand what he's saying. Right. Right? Like learn about it, look into it, and take responsibility for it.
Exactly.
Because when you go to that next step of, okay, well, tell me the specifics that apply to that, you've already missed it, and you're back to infant territory.
You're back to being an infant.
So let's talk carnivore diet.
Let's talk carnivore diet. So carnivore diet became famous because the daughter of Dr. Jordan Peterson went on it. I forget her first name, sorry. Iliana?
I don't remember.
Is that Iliana? Maybe. Sorry, I don't want to say. I think it's Iliana, but I'm probably completely off base on that. So this is someone who had a severe autoimmune disease. Like it gave her like arthritis. Yeah. Bad. She had 40 joints in pain growing up. I mean, one is bad. Yeah. 40. It was so bad that she had her hips replaced by the time she was 17, and I think the knees as well, or shoulder, or something like that. Yeah. I think it was. Or maybe, I know the hips, and then there was something else that got to be replaced by the time she was 17. So in major pain all the time. As a father, fuck.
What do you do? There's nothing.
I can only imagine my 12-year-old saying, I don't want to go to school, it hurts so bad. Yeah. What the fuck do you say? Like, I give Dr. Peterson and his wife all the credit in the world, because man. Yeah. So she also suffered from severe depression. There's a rabbit hole there between, so, 1 second. Do you know that there seem to be a relationship between, and it's actually far greater than I thought, between inflammation and depression?
It seems like it would make sense though, because it's a call for
so
like what's the next step after the inflammation?
Right. So inflammation is low-grade sympathetic. Yep. It would probably exhaust you, putting you into freeze mode, because inflammation is a constant expenditure of energy. Yeah. So at some point when you have spent so much energy on the inflammation, the body would have to go into full conservation of energy, which is freeze, which is depression. Yeah.
So either the inflammation is causing massive problems and pain and all these other things, or then the progression just out past that point is depression.
Is depression. That's what I think. Actually, that's what it is past inflammation leaves depression. Yeah. So that inflammation will lead you to depression, except the inflammation doesn't stop, so it keeps you going. So what did we see with the...
just really will cycle between different levers of magnitude between the both.
Between the both, right. Yeah. And so, but if you look at the protocol, first thing we did was to reduce inflammation, low-grade sympathetic response. So maybe that's why the protocol has helped for people with depression. But by the way, one of the main quality of lactate is to be anti-inflammatory. Right, so that means you produce lactate, depression goes down. What did we say with Burn the Questions? For depressed people.
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
I know there's a rabbit hole for you right there. Anyway, been doing a lot of work on anxiety and depression lately.
So carnivore.
Right.
We remove inflammation via.
So she goes on carnivore diet.
Carbs.
Yeah.
It's basically no carbs.
So first let's go history and then explain why it works. She goes on carnivore diet, and all her symptoms of arthritis go away, and all her symptoms of depression go away completely.
Yeah.
And to a point where her father, Dr. Pearson, was like, I don't understand. Because he's a psychologist who's done a career out of saying, like, you need to take responsibility and all that stuff to get yourself out of depression. And here goes his daughter, who goes on a carnivore diet and gets rid of depression. Yeah. To the point where it's like, what the fuck just happened? Let's be honest, he never said, take responsibility for your life to avoid depression. He said that's your best bet in life. Yeah. Your best bet in life is to not be a victim. Yeah. So I'm teasing, but that's not what he said either. Yeah. But I can only imagine, as a clinical psychologist,
it's like, well, fuck,
what the hell just happened?
Yeah,
right. But and I'm sure to this day, I'm sure he must have talked about it.
Well, if we're being honest,
I don't know.
As a father, if he would have had a really good solution and told her, if he would have told her this diet, she wouldn't have done it.
Let's be honest about that too. That is very true. So, but anyway, I thought. I'd be curious to ask him that question. As a clinical psychologist, how did you feel? He would probably be, I don't know. Anyway, so it works really well. So now the point is, why did it work? Yeah. Right? And then can you apply it to yourself in everyday life? So the reason, everything I'm going to say about diets is my opinion, right? Based on what I've read, what I study, and my own intellectual capacity. So I believe that it worked. Why? Because what they did was basically suppress everything but protein. We know protein drives you toward a parasympathetic state. We know that, right? From the gut flora to the requirement for digestion and everything. Protein drives you toward parasympathetic state. If you want more explanation on that, just go on the StrongFit library, type protein parasympathetic, and then you'll get all the papers. So by doing that, what they did is they removed that low-grade sympathetic response that we get from carbs, anything that your digestive system sees as somewhat of a threat or something it cannot digest well. So that can be cheese, like dairy products. If you have autoimmune disease, like she has, for example, that means that anything that can trigger a sympathetic reaction will make the autoimmune disease worse, because that's what an autoimmune disease is. It's a sympathetic reaction taken toward oneself. Yeah. We've seen that. It's like your body cannot basically fight itself way too hard. In long story short, basically. Oversimplification, but you get the idea.
So, and then the aftermath of that is going to be even greater bouts of depression.
Yeah, and so, exactly, right. So anything that could trigger a sympathetic response, right? So anything that would be bad in your diet. Dairies can definitely do that. We know that. Like there's a lot of people that are allergic to dairies. And allergy is a sympathetic response. Yeah. So anything that could create those things, she had to remove. And so in order to diminish the low-grade sympathetic response, right? And to not have any sympathetic reaction to food, what you're left with, protein.
Yeah. So she basically reduced all of the variables that we're giving her. Right. And this is the thing. So people often will view the carnivore diet as, I just eat protein. But if you really boil it down, what your process should be, say her process to get there was, I eat this, it gives me a sympathetic response. You should get to that. If that's the point you end up, you should get to there throughout like your life. Oh, I ate this and I didn't feel well and I got all, okay, so I stopped eating that.
Right.
And then the next day, and so in her case, it would have inevitably ended her. She would have inevitably ended with down to just this, because everything outside of that does. So these hard, fast rules, I'm not always totally married to, but the principle behind that is anything that's given
those
you.
are her hard, fast rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are hers. Yeah, because of the way she's built.
Yeah. But that's a really interesting way to get there, instead of jumping into the carnivore and saying eat meat, bro.
Carnivore tribe, that's what we do. We eat meat. Yeah. Because then there's that also like carnivore, like I'm a badass. There's all that stuff, and then there's a fat aspect, and then there's like I'm a carnivore diet kind of guy. Yeah. No, but if he helped your eczema, then fuck it, yeah. But now, so that's the plus. Let's talk about the minus for a second. So first of all, again, if it helps your psoriasis, your eczema, Again, those are what? Those are all sympathetic reaction on the skin level and everything. If it helps arthritis, then
absolutely.
Obviously. But now, let's also remember,
and don't be inflexible once you fucking get there.
Right.
With all of these
Exactly.
things.
Now, the question is, can you introduce more stuff?
No.
Right. So people are like, well, I reintroduced that. I'm like, all right, but how did you do it? For example, on the protocol, we had many cases of people severely allergic to dairies.
Yeah.
And once we put them on the protocol and the correct training session, which is burn the questions, they were able to go back on dairies with no issue.
Yeah, they learned to train with intensity, without depending on carbs too.
Exactly, and that was the key.
And then without excess inflation throughout the rest of the day. Then all of a sudden dairy wasn't a huge problem.
Exactly. Because it's the accumulation that gets them over the top. Yeah. So it happens many times that people can't take dairies because they're already in a low-grade sympathetic response. Yeah. Because of carbs, because of coffee, because of sugar. So once you clean that up and then you introduce the training with intensity, the fight mode, for many reasons we talked about other podcasts, we saw people not being allergic to dairies anymore.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that... So carnivore diet for a time in order to basically reduce all the sympathetic stuff would work very well. For example, if you were very stressed and I'm continuously, like right now, in the sympathetic response stuff, I bet you carnivore diet would mellow you out because it would take substances that could give you another sympathetic response. And the more sympathetic you are because of stress or whatever, the worse your digestion is. And so the more you could be affected by dairies or stuff you don't digest well in the first place because fats are hard to digest. Yeah. And then it snowballs from there. But that doesn't mean that the carnivore diet is the shit. Is that truth.
It's not the truth. It's not the truth.
No,
it's not your truth. Yeah. It's not my truth. It's a place that some people get to and that hopefully you're able to start adapting out.
At that stage in their lives.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't mean you stay. So there is no truth without concept.
Yeah. Also, could it be a really good starting point for someone to reset? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Totally.
Okay, well, you're not having any fucking carbs, and you're gonna. Fuck it. You're close enough. Cool. We'll start there, and then be aware once you've got a lot of that noise.
So we do have the circadian rhythm. So that means that you could not have the protein during the day.
But there is some noise there that maybe we're not going to be perfectly aligned. But maybe misalignment there is worth it when you're not dealing with noise of carbs and caffeine.
Maybe. Right.
Because we're talking transitionally.
Yes, exactly.
As opposed to a fucking thing that we have to put up on the top of a mountain.
If you put it on the pedestal, that means 5 years from now, you're still on the carnivore diet with no problem. And that's not true. Yeah. Because that we've seen it. Yeah. Some people will do it, like Dr. Peterson's daughter, because she doesn't have a choice.
Because experimenting outside of that, she maybe should be experimenting. I did try this thing. I didn't like that. Get back. Right. Because maybe there may be something in there.
If I could talk to her and show her the burn the questions and a number of stuff, I bet you we could experiment a specific way. Yeah. Right. There are ways to do this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And it doesn't mean you have to go back to eating everything. That's certainly not the point. But it's finding your thing at this moment.
No, because it is too restrictive, first of all, even mentally. And then physically, we are not designed to eat just protein. Yeah. That part isn't true. We are not carnivores. We are omnivores. Yeah. You need the veggies. You need you need fats. Yeah. You what is that Trapper's disease name? Like the actual technical...
Oh shit, I don't even...
Whatever. The Trapper's disease where it was shown that if you have protein but no fats, eventually you're going to be in trouble. So that's why steaks work so well for the carnivore diet because there's so much fats in it. Yeah. So without fats, you're screwed. So you still need protein and fats.
And that's one of those underlying truths that we're finding with almost any diet though, is that for it to kind of best give you work for a bit. Energy standpoint is that you need the fats. Yeah. Like that, I think, is a thread that's woven across the way. Right. Even with the carnivore diet, steak is probably better than going too lean too much.
But so steak at night where it has fats, you're fine. In the morning, they get eggs because the yolks allows them to give them some fats. Yeah. It still doesn't fit the protocol because of circadian rhythm. Yeah. But if you have eggs in the morning that are easier to digest and have fats in it, it will be a lot better than a lean cut of red meat for breakfast. Yeah. That one... Yeah, it ain't gonna work.
Or Cocoa Puffs. You know what I'm saying?
That too. Exactly. Right. So, but that's the thing too, is people I feel so much better. Yeah, because now you're not having Cocoa Puffs for breakfast.
Yeah. Well, and there's something to be said for any of these diets that go through transitionally. Any diet that works, or I think another universal truth. There should be limited amounts of processed food of any kind. Limited, if not none.
Yeah,
as little as possible. Yeah. And I think that's a great reduction when the keto or when carnivore diet automatically excludes these categories which are just ripe with fucking processed foods right now.
Exactly.
Carbs or no carbs, well, perfect, because at least you're not, if that's your constraint, is that like we're not going to have any processed foods, well, that does limit most of the carbs you're going to come across in a grocery store often, aside from starchy.
And that's why it works.
Yeah.
But that's why it works. So it's the exact same reason the keto diet works.
Yeah.
It's because keto diet means you have to reduce the carbs. That means you're going to get all the carbs out, the sugar, most processed foods out of the way. So, but the idea of going into keto was like you have to be in ketosis in order to do this and this and that. It's like you need the ketones to feed the brain. First of all, ketones and the brain. The main fuel for the brain is lactate, not ketones, not glucose. Yeah. So that whole conversation about glucose as fuel for the brain versus keto diet gives you ketones as fuel for the brain is wrong from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right, so are ketones as a fuel for the brain better than glucose as a substrate to lactate? Right, we can have that conversation, but it doesn't matter. The best fuel is still lactate.
Yeah.
That conversation is already out the window. So keto diet works well. Why? For the same reason, because you're gonna have to test yourself to stay in keto. To stay in keto means you can't have that much carbs.
Yeah.
So it's just a way to test to make sure that you're not having too much carbs. But it's not about the ketones, because again, the ketones are not the best fuel for the brain. Lactate is.
And there's the whole mess of all of the exogenous ketone products now that are coming out of the monetization side of that thing now. Right. All the noise I'm seeing on ketones are just noise to me now. I have to step back. Any noise about ketones being good, I'm out because there's too much money behind it. I can't even fucking play the game.
Right, and again, it's not the conversation. Lactate is the fuel for the brain. And on top of it with keto, remember, I was in ketosis while having 1.5 liters of chocolate milk a day.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know what I mean? Like, so the idea like carbs are
evil. This is your first time listening to this. Because I have a feeling if this is titled something about carnivore and keto diet, a lot of new people might see this one.
Right, yeah.
Is that in that time, Julien was, for you OGs, you know this, but Julien was having 1.5 liters of chocolate milk only during his training, which was intense and heavy, which meant all of those carbohydrates and sugars were getting immediately burnt up and used, which meant there was no excess. So he was still able to be in ketosis after a couple of weeks when having that every day, every training day.
I went from being a carb whore, right, especially with chocolate, stuff like that, to having only fats during the day, carbs while I train, protein at night. Veggies don't count. The carbs while I was training was 1 liter to 1.5 liters of chocolate milk every time I train. So 100 to 150 grams of sugar. While doing that, within 3 weeks, I was in ketosis, tested with the blood thing and everything. I was at 1.0. Yeah. So, right. So, but again, if you look from a behavior perspective, right, the keto diet would provide the same benefits in a way as a carnivore diet, which is lowering the low-grade sympathetic response.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look, all the diets we're going to talk about do that.
Yes.
It is about lowering the low-grade sympathetic response. I don't know how many times I've said it, but I'll say it again. This is the key. What we do in Western society today between the food and behavior is getting us massive amount of low-grade sympathetic response, so massive amount of inflammation, massive amounts of depression, of anxiety. The problem is the sympathetic responses.
Yeah, and all of those things could come as basically symptoms of things like the food quality and the carbs and the sugar.
We should talk about this at the end.
But here's the thing.
Sugar.
But the like you said, that low-grade sympathetic response. That's the root of it.
That's the one.
That's the root of it.
You need to get rid of
all those other problems, the processed food, that causes that.
Right.
Causes this. So
what causes that? What causes that? We have processed foods because it's shit.
Yeah.
So bad quality
Poor quality food. Yeah.
Poor quality food. So processed foods. And by the way, if you live in the US, meat many times.
Yeah.
Because that cow that you're buying from that fucking processing thing is sick, was fed corn, candies, tren. That cow is sick. Like I've seen the documentaries where they cut it and they have that green shit popping out and everything that they have to strip The processing plants, they strip using formaldehyde or whatever the fuck it was of any bacteria within the beef.
Yeah,
and then they have to put the taste back in after.
And I've seen what really good livestock raising management and harvesting is. And it is a very different thing. And the meat you eat look very different. So, but again, all that boils down to that one thing. So what all these things have in common is you got to get that fucking low-grade sympathetic response out of your life.
Exactly, because speaking of that, to make the point,
then you might never get a real one.
If you do the carnivore diet on beef that is sick, it's not carnivore diet because you're going to get a sympathetic response out of it.
And then now something that represents a very high percentage of your intake is compromised.
Right, and it's not going to be digested, which means undigested protein in your colon kills the gut flora, which is that actually can destroy you and has been. Well, let's not talk about cancer, even though most likely there's a link there as well. But like having undigested food in your colon is one of the worst things you can do to yourself. Yeah. So we're coming back to two things for a diet: digestion, circadian rhythm and digestion, and removing the low-grade sympathetic response that we are getting from this fucking society around us. Yeah. That's what it boils down to. And if you look at keto, it's a way to control what you eat to get exactly to that. Mm-hmm. And so let's look at fasting.
Okay, intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting. Yeah. So what is the idea really? The idea really of intermittent fasting is that we're going to stop you having to digest continuously.
At the very forefront of intermittent fasting, I think a lot of people get into it thinking that it's going to give them some sort of self-control. That it's more about... It's more about like, oh yeah, so I just don't eat for this time, and then I can eat here. But that's
then I can eat. But it seems like
eat
whatever the fuck they want.
Well, and even then, it still seems like that big chunk. Getting into it from a deprivation standpoint is like, oh good, I just protect myself from myself by making this hard fast rule, and then we're all set. And that was not the way. And I have a good take on this. You're not going to remind me of anything. No, because we got to get back to it. Won't fit now. But anyways.
We'll come back.
All right, intermittent fasting. Yeah. So one of the things we talked about eating windows in our nutrition protocol as a transitional phase to kind of as you're experimenting.
But it's a good
system. And one thing that I found amidst the quarantine was like I had adopted eating windows generally is like I just have something in the morning, like basically a fat only in the morning. And I often would fast until around 4 or 5 p.m. Then I'd have a fat, some kind of protein thing to get in as I prepare for dinner, or an early dinner and then a later more protein as well. All that aside, the intermittent fasting for me, that block was actually just best for me because that was the times in which I was doing stuff. Yeah. Me, I was like, I'm training, I'm going to work. Now that it's quarantine time and my activity's a little less, now I'm tempted to like, oh, fuck, I think I need to like force these eating windows in here because I just have this time. And you feel that pull all the time. And so now I see that intermittent fasting, sometimes that people using that structure as opposed to what it was before. Because like I told you, I said, I wish it was before where I just had a little bit of food in the morning, like a little bit in the morning and then nothing until the eating. It's because I was doing shit and it's like...
you're like how you felt.
So the eating windows were more actually... It wasn't about eating windows. It was about having a wide enough fucking window where you're doing things and you're not eating.
Exactly. It's about behavior.
And so for intermittent fasting, I think having this block of time of deprivation is maybe not the best way to look at it. When it should be, that's a block of time of activity that's not eating, not snacking, and that needs to be built into your day.
And what needs to be also, if I put fasting toward circadian rhythms, that means that you don't eat that much during the day. So that means you're in a hunting mode, not a low grade sympathetic response, a true sympathetic response where you go hunt. So that's where you feel clear-minded and everything, is because on one side you are given the energy that you would use normally toward digesting. Yeah. That's why some people, when they have breakfast, they feel down because the energy is being taken toward digestion, especially if it's the wrong type of food. That energy sometimes, so instead of being used for digestion, it's being used toward doing stuff. Yeah. So that sounds far, from a behavioral perspective, that sounds far more interesting, right? So you actually do stuff. You are a little bit hungry, so that makes you hunt. That's a natural, true sympathetic reaction, right? An active one instead of a passive one. So it makes you go around, and in that time, your organs have the time to heal. Because you have to understand that putting food in continuously taxes your organs. All that shit has to be processed, has to be, like cleared and clean and processed and driven there and there and there, and all that shit happens.
The down-regulating that has to happen to digest a big meal, like kind of all of your organs.
And then, the kidneys and the thing and
There's a lot of things that happen for your body to handle.
Once you give gaps to your body, it can finally heal. Remember, the body is a learning mechanism. Mm-hmm. If he has clear time sets, but like always the same, like because he knows then at 8 from like 8 o'clock, he's finished with dinner. He knows until the next day at 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. or whatever, he can heal. There will nothing coming in that allows to basically check and clear all the organs, because they know they're not going to be taxed and working. They're always working, but you know what I mean? Like they have a chance to rest a bit more and heal from all the digesting process.
Has there ever been a time, evolutionarily speaking, where humans were, or our predecessors were, grazing type creatures, where we did just kind of eat all day? Like that kind of 3 meals a day seems like a very work-based structure.
Yeah, that's new.
You will.
That's new. Like lunch is new. Yeah. Right. Yeah, the 3 meal a day is new. So we always had feeding windows where it was mostly
eat before you go to work. Eat halfway through your workday so you don't jump off the fucking roof. Yeah. And then fucking eat when you get home to enjoy some time with your family.
If you look at but by the way, that's if what we saw, like culturally speaking, it wasn't even in the same day. It was like there was nothing for 2 days, and then they ate all day. Yeah. Like you see that in the French culture, like when they had those feasts at the castles, it was literally a 6-hour feast where they kept bringing food, but it wasn't every day.
Yeah.
It wasn't every day, because then the guy had to, go war or whatever, eat very little, come back, and then fatten up.
Have a monthly food orgies and off you go.
Well, that, or even like, but like every 2-3 days or things like this is because the requirements were different. You know what I mean? Like, so that whole like very set structure of eating 3 times a day, even that is very new. But one thing is for sure, we were never grazing animals, ever.
Now, in that block of time in intermittent fasting, it's something that I do fairly often. Not so good at with the quarantine, but those blocks of time for me, it often would be literally some fat, not a lot to be filling, mostly cream, first thing in the morning, and then almost nothing for the day. But the nice thing for that, for me as a person who's done lots of diets where I'm eating a lot, eating often, eating a lot of carbs. People forget too, carbs take up so much fucking space. Yeah. And
rice,
and then you want to get you want to try to push the scalability of some of these things, which I've done. Like, okay, so eating some rice can help you get a little bit of size. Eating a lot of rice does, and it kind of does. And then eating double that does, but not as much, not twice as much. And next thing you know, like in my case, I was eating 16 to 18 cups of rice a day. Where the fuck is that during the day? Yeah. I mean, it's in here. Yeah. I mean, it's maybe not turning into fat, but I'm carrying it around and I don't fucking feel good. Yeah. And so what I found for me was like, I feel literally less heavy, and it's not tissue, but just not being under some sort of digestive load all fucking day feels fantastic. Yeah.
Like the stress on your body and the stress mentally.
And everything that you do, you're trying to do against what your body is telling you, because when you eat that much, you just crash.
And remember, what happens when you have prediction versus observation? You get a somatic error. That means that eating like that will drive to anxiety, will drive to inflammation.
And it just makes every action you do a little harder. Going upstairs, going outside, training.
So now your mouth's breathing. By the way, the joints hurt because you're in that low-grade sympathetic response all the time. So so that's where we're going to end up. And by the way, so if you look at paleo diet, it's the same thing. Yeah. What was the idea of paleo diet? Stop today's food. Yeah. So stop processed foods, stop having so much carbs. Yeah. It's the same idea, right? So the one thing that there is no diet out there that is covering is caffeine. Yeah. Still, no one wants to criticize coffee. Isn't that weird? Like we talked about this, last podcast, whatever. But if you start to say caffeine, so by the way, I was starting to go on decaf, right? Because I still have my machine, and I do a really good latte that I make with oat milk, maybe a little bit of cashew butter that I mix, and then decaf. Oh, it was so good. But decaf is never completely caffeine free.
Never.
And I started with one, and before you know it, I'm having 5-6 a day. And before you know it, I'm starting to get the pressure under my eyes where I'm like, ooh, I know that one. That weird, and then that weird, like not cranky quite, but there was that, I could feel the somatic error there. I was like, I know that one. And one day I was like, fuck, it's the caffeine of the decaf. There's enough caffeine because I can see myself wanting more decaf. Suddenly I want a decaf all the time. I'm like, I'm getting hooked on caffeine again. I know it because then I can feel like
it doesn't taste that good. I mean, it tastes fine. It can be a good tasting one.
It's a very, very good decaf.
But you don't keep going back to that well because
right,
it
not
tastes
that many times, right? And I was like, and I had that feeling again exactly when I had coffee of always being tired and then thinking like, I need a decaf.
Need coffee,
yeah. And so suddenly I'm like, I'm doing it again because decaf, when I was having so much coffee, switching to decaf was going down. Yeah. So there's not good or bad in diets. There's better or worse. And that's a very important thing to understand because you will change. So what you're looking for, no matter what level you are you getting better or are you getting worse? And it doesn't, so it's good in, even there's no good and bad, but it's good in both sense, which means if you're at the bottom and you do better, that's great. Yeah. If you're at the top and if you do worse, that's bad. But so there is no good and bad. They're just better or worse. And so I'm at a stage where I'm so sensitive to sympathetic fixes that even decaf is too much. So for the last 3 days, now I'm doing tea. And I'm guessing I'm going to have to switch to caffeine, tea without caffeine.
That is interesting.
And that works better for me.
The decaf that you got me, the Swiss water one, that one is pretty good. Very little caffeine. I've noticed very little. I bought the one that it's the best tasting one. It's the one from the guy in Utrecht that you go through.
Right, but that's
fucking good decaf. But it tasted good.
Yeah.
But I could tell with one espresso, I was like, it tasted really good. And then it was moments where I was like, man, that ain't the taste that I'm fucking feeling right now. Yeah. And so with to finish that peg, it is like probably like every third day. I just don't have much coffee with it because it'll actually make me, when I work, it's madness. So if I have that now, it spins out of control. Yeah. Before, it could give me this focused thing.
But not right
caffeine
now.
Would give me when I'm working. Being caffeinated would make me feel like I can do what I do now when I work. Yeah. If I had caffeine now when I work, it would be out of control. I'd be useless. It would be it would be insane.
Right. And so, but it requires you getting off of it to realize that you can find it yourself, which is what we see in a lot of diets. Is people don't eat because they truly need something. They eat because it replaces their action. Caffeine, carbs, all that stuff, it replaces your action. You're being passive, going back to being an infant. It's an infant mentality of my caretaker, carbs, coffee, will provide what I should be providing through action. Yeah. So coffee and carbs become your impulse. So that's back to the infant who needs a caretaker to change the world for them. This is why you have such a strong relationship with coffee and carbs, because literally they became your caretaker. So they became the power structure. So that's why they like coffee has such a hold on me. Yeah, because by allowing coffee to become your action, you're allowing them to become your caretaker. You're allowing them to be in a position of power on you, literally. So by doing that, you infantilized yourself when it comes to coffee and carbs. So literally, coffee is your daddy.
Did we have other diet we wanted to get into?
Wow, we did 4.
Of intermittent fasting. Yeah.
Okay. Intermittent fasting, we did keto, we did carnivore, and then paleo diet is the same idea. Paleo diet is remove all processed foods, all the stuff that causes a low-grade sympathetic response.
There's some benefits, I think, about the paleo diet that maybe we don't see as much of with keto and carnivore, is the paleo diet seems to encourage diversity of nutrients a little bit more often. That's kind true. Of at its
That's
root.
True. Compared to the other two.
In that it seems to be a much more, maybe it's just culturally though, maybe it's the people that are selling it. But I feel like when I think of the paleo diet, I do think of a much more colorful, diverse, wider macronutrient profile, at least, when I think of what the paleo diet would be.
We're missing one. We're missing the protocol from StrongFit.
Oh,
there's new people.
Yes, okay.
So the idea was literally to better sleep and to remove the low-grade sympathetic response. That was the idea of the protocol. So the idea was based on the circadian rhythms, which means we said fat during the day, but no protein. Why no protein? Because protein requires lots of digestion, requires to be in a parasympathetic state, and the daytime is not the time for that. Yeah. So that's why we say protein only at nights, because they should be for a true sympathetic response through action, not a low-grade one. So that means carbs have to be out there because they drive too much of a sympathetic response for your day-to-day activity. So that means you have carbs when you train hard, and that's it. Yeah. And rest of the time you have fat for energy to keep you into a true sympathetic state for the day. And then at night you switch to protein to go into a parasympathetic.
Yeah. And veggies that are not going to cause any wild response or kind of allow
or starch-based or stuff like that. So salad, carrots, all that shit, you're not going to get a sympathetic response out of that. Yeah. Not even a low-grade sympathetic response out of that one. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think it's good.
Yeah, I think we'll cover. Yeah, because what I wanted for people to see me out of all this was that the goal is to sleep better at night and remove the low-grade sympathetic response. Yeah. And to do that, you need to take control of yourself. Like, this is about taking responsibility of you. Like, do not let, and again, the fitness industry is very bad at that. Do not let them sell you stuff. Then do not let them infantilize you into accepting them as caretakers, because they're not.
And I also think an interesting note and aside is that when we talk about everyone's trying to sell something, now I don't think the people who aren't hip to the like caffeine might not be good for you thing are bad people. Maybe they're just not hip to it yet. Maybe just don't know, right? That's a possibility, maybe.
Again, I think.
But I will. Here's what I'll say though: is that being the person in the organization that's standing, telling people like, "Hey, y'all probably need to not be drinking caffeine." That's kind of proof that we're not trying to sell the most of these things. Because if within the first couple weeks of the conversation about the nutrition protocol, we're trying to convince you that you should maybe get caffeine out of your life, that's not a recipe for fucking millions of sales.
That's for sure.
So, and that's not the point. That was never the point. So we're digging in on rightness more than
exactly. And the key to all this, again, is not really caffeine as much as what are your sympathetic fixes. I've discovered that I can't have caffeine because the second I have caffeine, I need more caffeine. It drives me, maybe it's the autism stuff, but it drives me toward a state where I'm not me anymore. Like become a product of caffeine. Yeah. Caffeine becomes that authority over me, and I don't like it, obviously. It changes, like I can tell the somatic error is growing. The more caffeine I have, the better the somatic error, right? Yeah. So when it comes to your fixes, right, which one is which? For example, I can drink. Mm-hmm. I can drink every night at Richard Deya's place and then not drink for a week. It makes no difference whatsoever. If anything, I'm like, I should not drink. The next morning, I feel it. So it does nothing to me. Yeah. Carbs, I can have some, not have some, doesn't seem to be a big difference. Sugar, gotta be careful. Exactly. Gotta be careful, right? So can I keep it in control? If I can have a little bit, but that's the question. Caffeine, it seems I cannot. Because even when I have a little bit, it always drives me to more. Yeah.
And the experimentation of not being married to carnivore, keto, not being married to that framework is the reason that you were able to find out those things.
Right. Because you got to try, by the way.
Well, because also like caffeine did not have that effect on you when you were having 7 a day.
Right.
And it is then you're left with this and you're like, I got to see what I can do with this.
I didn't know that caffeine was having that effect on me because I was having 7 a day. That's what you have to understand is you can actually, your body can feel a lot of stuff, but they never get to the conscious level. The reason is the conscious level, it's a survival mechanism where I can't have everything that my body tells me at a conscious level. Otherwise, I'd be too distracted when the bear is coming.
Yeah, and that's why you're really not going to know because it's a problem that needs to be solved in the long term.
Right.
And moving around in the world, there's a lot of short term issues that need priority. We can only pay attention to so much at once. I mean, there's actually not as much bandwidth as people think.
There is actually, the bandwidth is actually very small for survival reason, for very, very good reason. But that doesn't mean it's not there. It just means it's not being brought up to the conscious level. Yeah. So people are like, I'm fine with caffeine. How would you know? You're having so much coffee per day, you don't know. Mm-hmm. That becomes your baseline, your conscious baseline, but not your subconscious baseline. Your body is still being driven the wrong way, but on a subconscious level.
Yeah. And if you want to defend a thing that is just a stationary fucking regular old object like coffee, like to the point where, I mean, we've seen like rage from people when you make them consider the idea of removing coffee. like anger. I was like, dude, what is that? Like, are you that attached to your fucking, like,
it's like I insulted
you
your
that
mom.
attached to the fucking brand of soap you used?
I insulted your mom.
Yeah.
Your caretaker.
Yeah.
That's what it becomes. Literally, the coffee becomes mommy or daddy, depending. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for us. That'll wrap us up for today. See you in a couple days. Support the podcast at podcast.strongfit.com. Look at me, don't look at him. Podcast.strongfit.com. You can support the podcast. We have donations, those other things. You can also go to the StrongFit Library, strongfitlibrary.com.
Like
that is where you will find
the
StrongFit Library at strongfitlibrary.com. That's got all the articles, studies, everything, every videos we've made, sorted, categorized, searchable, all the good stuff for you there. You can get sandbags and shirts, apparel at strongfitequipment.com. You can also book seminars, all sorts of other stuff at strongfit.com. We also have strongfitequipment.eu for Europe, Manta Fitness for Australia and New Zealand for sandbags and apparel. And I'll be goddamned if I'm not forgetting something every time. Julien has his functional integration training template out. It's operating. There are lots of people on it talking about it in the community. You can find that in the link below here or on Instagram as well. Same thing with Julien's one-to-one coaching. You have one-to-one spots, still spots open, right?
Yeah.
For one-to-one for coaching, for training, and one-to-one for nutrition. And you can also combine them as well. God, I think that's it. Follow Julien on Instagram at StrongFit1. I'm at Tyler F. and Richard's at Rare Barracuda, and we will see you in a couple days.